Hello and welcome to episode 1291 of The Sleeper and the Bust. It is Monday, April 29th. I'm your host, Paul Sporer, joined this afternoon by Justin Mason. Justin, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. It is actually afternoon for me. This is a
It is,
little
yes.
weird feeling. We usually
I
record early
checked.
on Mondays.
Yeah, we started. I thought we were recording for a while in the afternoon. Now we've shifted to morning, but today we shifted to afternoon. How was your weekend?
It was exhausting. My kid was in a parade. They're in they're in the
wonderful
school band and the marching band, and so they were marching in a parade. I snuck
great.
into said parade.
I mean, you snuck into it. Why
on
couldn't you just go
on
in
a
like
dare.
everybody else?
No. I mean, like I was actually in the parade.
Oh.
Like I got in behind my
Got it.
kid
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
parade
I
and was
can
like
foster a
rocking out
guess
with
who
the
dared
parade.
you. Yeah.
But it was a huge mistake because one, I got a massive sunburn, like
Deserved.
unreal, like because like
Karma.
I didn't prepare for doing this. I just did
Karma.
it.
She is a sunburn.
Yeah. So no, I got blindsided by the sun. And then a bee stung me in the middle of the parade and then flew into my shirt.
Oh, I want that bee on the podcast so badly.
Oh my god. I haven't been stung by a bee in 30 years. Like,
this was deserved.
That hurt.
Get your ass out of the parade.
Yeah. It was karma.
This bee regulates shit. It's a kick-ass bee.
The bee's like, this is my show.
Yeah.
Like, get out of here.
I'm here. I've been planning for this and working for this for so long. I'm going to mess you up. And so the bee got you. And then the bee is actually friends with the sun and said, here, do your worst. So you got double whammy there. You deserved it. But we got some baseball to talk about. You did have the free agent episode yesterday. So we're going to go over a couple bits of news. Well, one bit of news, guy coming up, a little bit of strategy talk, and then we're going to do shallow league cut or hold with some pitchers. We did it with some hitters last week. Want to see where you're at with some pitchers. Injuries usually play a role when it comes to pitching, so there's going to be some discussion of injury here where you kind of have to decide where you're at. Are you holding through an injury, or are you just going to go ahead and peace out? But let's start with Joey Loperfido coming up for the Astros. Now, this is one of those situations where this is not a top flight prospect, but it's like a nice prospect who could come up and do some damage. And this is one of the ancillary benefits to me of spring training, because I pick up these random names. I did not know Joey Loperfido. Now, to his credit, had a hell of a season last year. So that's on me. That's my gap in knowledge there. Not so much that he's a completely out of nowhere player, but he wasn't on my radar. And I try to get better with prospects every year, but sometimes you just miss guys. And again, he wasn't a top tier prospect. So I missed Loperfido's 24 homer steal season last year. Now, most of it was done at AA, where he is a bit old for the age, which is why his prospect rating's a little light. Well, had a big spring and was lurking on the roster for quite some time. He might make this team. Holy smokes, is Joey Loperfido going to make this team? Last second, he did not. He decided not to get mad about that. Or maybe he did and just took it out on all the baseballs. I can't speak to his mental state, but he went and raked 13 homers and 5 steals in just 25 games at AAA for the 25-year-old Loperfido, also with a 30% K rate, but also 13% walk. So pluses and minuses all over the place. Lots to like here with Joey Loperfido. If he's coming up, I imagine they're going to play him. Are you interested in Joey Loperfido? And if so, what formats for the Houston Astros prospect?
I'm definitely interested in 15-team leagues. I'm going to caution people that, like, he's been striking out quite a bit at AAA this year and last year. So the contact skills, I don't know that they're super, super strong. I think this says more about Jose Abreu and just his lack of talent at this point than
Things
it says.
Rough right now.
Yeah. Because I'm pretty sure Loperfido was an outfielder and they've transitioned him into a first baseman this year.
Correct.
So, like, I think this just says volumes about where they're at, where they're just willing to take a bath on the rest of Brady's contract to get Loperfido or get anybody who can hit the ball at all in the lineup. So, I mean, obviously they're a team that's struggling. Maybe if they weren't struggling as a team, they wouldn't feel like this is a necessity to make a move. But they are struggling, and so they need to kind of do something. And but if he can hit in this lineup and at least make around, even just below league average contact, like there's a good amount of power in the bat and there's some speed
And
and
he can run a bit.
yeah. So I don't mind it. I think he's a 15 team guy right now. On maybe you watch some of your 10s and 12s.
Yeah.
Because in 10s and 12s there's got to be more or a little bit better options, I think, on the wire.
Established options out there too,
Yeah.
like Loperfido coming up. We have no idea what he is. So I agree with you there. Only one lefty this week. He himself, Loperfido, is a lefty. So he's going to be getting the call. Again, 13 homers, 5 for 5 on the bases so far. The 30% K rate, like some of the K rate stuff is due to his walk rates. Like he gets in those deep counts. He's not up there completely flailing, no idea what he's doing. But he is taking his A swing, trying to get loose, if not take a walk. So there is the high case. I think they'll be pretty high at the major league level too. But yeah, he's pretty interesting. I think the reason he's mainly 15 right now too is because we just don't know what kind of playing time Loperfido's going to get. Is it going to be a straight platoon where he's playing against all the righties, sitting against lefties? Or is it more of a half and half every other day between he and Abreu? What is it going to be? That's what we need to kind of figure out right now. And I think you can risk missing him in your 12s. Like if somebody jumps early just to try to get on the train, okay, let them have that. I don't think you need to bend over backwards to get him in the shallower formats just yet.
Yeah,
Now,
I agree.
he could come up and maybe he doesn't play instantly, and that keeps the bids down. Then maybe you could bide your time, pick him up on the cheap. And we won't know till Sunday in the main event, right? Like in NFBC, we can't pick Loperfido up until he's in the majors anyway. So it's going to be a whole week of information to kind of figure out. That's kind of what happened with Heston Kierstead last week. And turns out that the bids were pretty tepid outside of a handful. And the people that went big, they went too high. They just did not quite read it based on where everyone was at. Now, listen, I understand getting your guy, but there were some bids out there that got really aggressive. Kierstead started one game since getting called up on Tuesday. I think got in a second. Now, they did play 2 lefties and 3 righties, so the opportunities weren't super plentiful. We recalled when we were talking offline about this with Kierstead, Cowser wasn't playing immediately either. But then he kind of superseded Hayes. And I mentioned to you that we were actually talking about this yesterday in the RotoWire podcast chat with Jeff Erickson and Scott Jensen. Same sort of thing, because they were saying, hey, Kierstead's going to need to thwart somebody. Like something's still going to have to happen. Either somebody gets hurt or he just is the clear best option the way Cowser made himself over Hayes. And Hayes is on the IL too. So that helped. And an actual injury really sealed that fate and opened the door for Cowser. Is it savvy to jump on Kierstead now if you can wait and pay the lower price? Or is it just not enough playing time and you're kind of, pissing in the wind a little bit, trying to jump on a no playing time guy right now?
I think it really just depends on what your team needs and can handle, right? Like I think, like you said, like if you're in a position where like you could stash a guy for a little bit and kind of wait and see how it plays out, then I would. I think Heston Kierstead has talent. He clearly has nothing left to prove in AAA, but there's really just no direct spot right now for him.
Not for everyday burn.
No.
He's also a lefty. So you look at like O'Hearn, who plays some right and some DH, things that obviously Kierstead himself could play. O'Hearn gets in at first on occasion too, but they're lefty and lefty. And O'Hearn,
unless he was gonna platoon with Mountcastle, like Mountcastle,
but then
righty,
that's.
So.
Are they ready to kind of move off of Mountcastle?
I don't know that they
Mountcastle's playing brilliantly. 161 WR. Like how do you just rip a roll from a guy like that who's been around for 5 years?
Yeah.
Been a good player there. Like that would be kind of shitty. And I love Kierstead. I think he can be a stud, but like I don't think that you do that to I think Mountcastle's good enough that you ride it out and see where he's at.
Kierstead played the first game he got called up for and then has not played since. Like he has just not been in the lineup at all. So
I thought he got in one other game as a sub, but I might be wrong.
Maybe.
Bottom line is he did not play. So the bids were mostly low, which I agreed with.
Yeah.
Again, we did see a few outsized ones, and I'm not really trying to set this up to like roast the people that went high. My main question, though, is do you like the stash? If you can afford the stash, is Kierstead somebody that's high on your list in a 15-teamer that you think could pop and really break through Cowser style? Or do you see him elsewhere? Don't forget also, UT only in the NFBC universe.
UT only in most universes because he
I
played most
imagine
of his
most. Yes,
games.
yes.
Yeah. Unless, I mean, maybe Yahoo, he's eligible everywhere
Four
because he's
games in outfield, so maybe not even in Yahoo.
maybe not even Yahoo. So, yeah, I mean, I wanna say like talent finds a way because talent typically does, but typically we're not talking about situations like the Orioles where they're just so stacked, like they're just it's
All they have is
unreal.
talent.
Like I wish they could trade for somebody, but like what would they trade for? Like
Exactly.
they're gonna have a rotation problem here soon. Like,
Yeah.
all of a sudden, like, John Means comes back and now what happens to Albert Suarez? Like,
Yeah, they're just
um,
gonna have Suarez as a sixth, and then Cole
yeah,
Irvin, who's actually been pitching a little bit better lately, he's gonna become the sixth or the seventh, and they're gonna start to build some depth there if Bradish and Means both come back. Yeah, like they're starting to be in like a really, really strong position in Baltimore. And
Aaron in the chat saying he has outfield in
oh,
Yahoo,
he
which
does
of
have it.
course he
Okay,
does. So
maybe because it was 4 of so few games. It was
yeah,
four
probably.
of 10 games or 13 games last year. And so that was enough because I thought it was a 5 game eligibility. But yeah, so he does have outfield there. Again, that's also 3 outfield though. So even though he does have the outfield, it doesn't help Kerstead that much in your 12 teamers. So I love him as a stash in 15s. I think that's as deep as I go right now with Kerstead. I don't mind jumping it, but for example, I have Darvish and Miller DL'd, IL'd in one league. I don't have room. The other league, I only have one IL, but it's Royce Lewis. And so that's kind of my stash there. So I couldn't really get in. Oh, I have Darvish there too. I have Darvish in both leagues. Duh. So I've already got 2 ILs in both leagues. I couldn't get in on a Kerstead stash. So I didn't really participate, but I am certainly intrigued by him if and when he finds the PT. And I was just
Yeah,
curious if you liked the idea of kind of jumping in there early to get him on the cheap because you actually did that with another Oriole last week,
I did.
Yanir Cano. Was that because you were worried about Kimbrel? Because I was right, low these many years ago, that Kimbrel does indeed stink. Now, maybe I
Yeah,
wasn't right the year I told you. If you want to hold that against me, he went out and saved like 30 with a 2 ERA. Okay, cry about it. But 4 years later, I am very correct.
yes. 4 years later, you are very correct. A la Chris Sale and all the
Yeah.
victory lappers on him finally getting hurt. Yeah, for me, like it was just one of those things where one Kimbrel hasn't looked great closing. I think he was dealing with a back issue at one point
Yes.
too. Like,
Still is, I think,
yeah,
on
I
and off
think.
type of deal.
Well, he left the game yesterday with something. I can't remember exactly what it was. I remember writing it up in the roto write up, but
I
um,
think it was extensive suckiness was the
yeah, and
in
that's probably what
parentheses.
it was. And Cano has looked like Cano. So I was like, and there's very few situations where you go, like, hey, we know who the next guy up is. There's no real
Yes.
question. And so I dropped Anthony Bender in a couple
That's
spots,
who I
and
dropped to get him.
yeah, and I picked up Cano, and I got him
But
for
how much
three
did you
bucks.
pay?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
got
you paid
him for $3 a
$3
week
last
ago.
week. And don't get me wrong, I like my 69. I think it was a very nice price,
Nice.
68 backup bid. But $3 is quite a bit hotter there.
Yeah.
I can do the math in my head on that one. That's 23 times better than what I paid.
If
So
you have
nicely
the
done
extra
there.
spot for a pitcher, like these are the kind of situations you should be specking on, right? Like you should be going
Yes.
like, hey, this guy doesn't look great. And if maybe a week from now, if he takes over, if the backup guy takes over, like I may have to
He's
spend
300
$100. Yeah. Oh yeah.
If Cano is like the guy in Baltimore, you know that's a
Yeah.
$300 bid
So
because it's
getting him
Baltimore
this
too.
week getting him this week was huge for me.
But getting him
Or
last
getting him
week,
last week. Yeah.
even better. Nicely done there. So anyway, the putting a bow on the spec, it does always come down to your team. I love somebody like Kerstead, but if you're already carrying like an IL slot or something like that, you already got a stash or maybe 2, then you really shouldn't have been playing there. I do think you run the risk of getting too inefficient with your bench to make Friday moves with your lineup, like if you have no bench bats or anything. And so just be careful. Go out there, get them where you can, but don't do it at the expense of your here and now team because the payoff might not come. He might go back down. You end up cutting Kerstead, and it's the second time he comes up that the playing time is really there, right? Like we just don't know if that spot will open.
Yeah.
God, they are so talented in Baltimore. It's unbelievable. All right, let's talk some cutter hold shallow league pitcher edition. So again, we're starting 12s and lower. Nothing here to do with 15s. I don't think you can cut these guys, simply put. Now, a couple of the injury guys we might talk, there could be a scenario where maybe you're piled up in injuries and one of these guys is the cut. But for the most part, absent that, if you're if you have no ILs or anything, you're holding these guys. Let's start with Chris Bassett. The old Bassett Hound has simply not been getting it done. Things have looked a little bit wobbly at times. I think we've seen this before from him, like a 5-6 start run of ugliness that has certainly rebounded. My concern here, though, is that the skills crater, 9% strikeout minus walk for Bassett, led by the 5-point surge in walk rate up to 12%. Home runs, always kind of a lurking issue with him when he's wobbly. 1.8 right now this year. Crazy. Throw in a crazy high 384 BABIP that is yielding an 11.6 hits 9. Tons of numbers. Add it all up. Bassett's been terrible. Where you at in the shallower formats with, and I had this pulled up, with, for Bassett, KC on the docket this week?
Man, I feel like this year is like the year of like, hey, we've seen some skills declines over the years on certain players, and now it's like the straw breaking the camel's back. And I feel like with
35,
Bassett,
by the way, too, for Bassett.
yeah, I think maybe this is like finally the year. You know, we've seen the zone contact go up and the swing strike rate drop kind of each year for the last few years, and now it's become too difficult for him to maintain, especially when he throws 92. He's not like a flamethrower that can get away with mistakes and stuff. So I have no problem dropping him in 10s and 12s. Like there's not much in the profile where I go, oh, this is going to turn around, which is a bummer because like coming into the season, well, I didn't get Bassett in a lot of places. It's not because I didn't want him. It's because other people would jump me a little bit because I felt like, hey, he doesn't walk guys. He doesn't usually give up a ton of home runs. Like, he's kind of just this boring innings eater dude that I tend to like. And he's been anything but. And if, the problem with a guy who is a boring innings eater is you need them to be boring in order to like that make that work. You don't want
much flair here with the blow up outings.
You don't want 5 innings or 6 innings of a 5 ERA. Like so, like in my 15s, the places where I got him, I'm just benching him right now. But in 10s and 12s, I think you should move on.
Yep, I think that's where I'm at with Chris Bassett. I think you are holding in those 15s because you're just not going to find anything that much better. And there is a path back. We are a bit doom and gloomy here right now with Bassett, but again, we've seen bad outings before. Now, what I would have wish I had the time to do when I was setting up all the prep, I did want to go back and look at some of his other bad lulls and see if the walk rate had spiked for Bassett. I don't recall it doing that, but I might have that wrong. So if you are concerned about Bassett and you have him, maybe do that extra legwork of checking out some previous down periods and seeing if the walk rate spiked in concert.
In like the hard part is like it's not like usually like there's some small sample funkiness that like plays out early on in the season where you go, like I mean like Hunter Brown, like don't get me wrong, like I still am worried about Hunter Brown a little bit, but like that one start where he gave up 9 runs in like a 2/3 of an inning, like that's gonna hold a lot of weight into his
for
overall
a while.
line. But for Bassett, like he has not had an outing where he's walked less than 2.
I found it. It took no time. It was actually literally last year. He opened with a 5.18 ERA in April. He had a bad April last year, and he had a high walk rate. In fact, if you add not only his first 6 April starts, but then his 7th into May when he walked 4 more there, it was a 12% walk rate. The exact same walk rate that we're seeing right now out of Chris Bassett.
Interesting.
From that point on, now, in that first May start, he did walk 4, but it was 7 scoreless at Pittsburgh. So it was like kind of an encouraging start, even though the walks were still there. Then the very next start, he walked only 2 and only walked more than 3 one other time the rest of the year. From the next 26 starts, Bassett put up 160 innings of a 3.43 ERA with a 1.16 whip. So I know that just because it happened last year and he bounced back, he's not guaranteed that this year for Bassett. But seeing the exact scenario play out has me pulling back a little bit. Maybe he takes some getting used to. Maybe he doesn't like some of the cold weather. Although Toronto's in a dome and he's had three starts there. The others were at San Diego, Houston, and Tampa Bay. So never mind, that's out
Yeah,
the
like
window.
it's
Throw
not
the
cold
cold
stuff.
weather
Yeah,
thing out. But maybe it's a slow start thing. I've moved a little on my spectrum of cut. I might try to hold through a little bit longer,
I
just
wouldn't.
because he had the same exact 6 outing flop to begin last year.
Any place you're gonna cut him right now, you can go back and pick him up for. Like, I mean, you're
That's
not cutting
true.
him in a 15 where someone's automatically just gonna go scoop him
Automatically
because
going
of
to
a healthy
scoop him.
arm. Like in a
Okay.
10 and 12, I don't think like if he has a couple like walk free outings, like I don't think anybody's running to the wire to pick up Chris
He
Bassett.
gets Casey this week, and then Bassett goes to Philly. So I don't even love either of those. Okay, you
Yeah,
know what? I'll stay unmoved. I'll point out that it did happen last year, so you don't have to cut him, but
cut
I'm going
him
to
and
move
put him on
back.
your watch list.
There you go. There you
Like
go.
that. I think that's what you do.
Okay, I'm sold on that with Bassett. Just keep tabs on him if you cut him, so that you can run back if things turn. Blake Snell, we got to talk about him. We gotta, right? So basically, his spring training came in the form of the season, and that's the tough part, right? Because you're kind of doing it on the fly there. It did not go well, and now he's on the IL with an adductor strain or strained groin. Now is an adductor or groin? I thought an adductor was your oblique. I don't know
No,
body
the
parts.
adductor's your butt, isn't it?
Okay, well, it says strained groin now, so it's somewhere in
Or
that
groin? Yeah,
area.
groin. Yeah.
So yeah, strained groin. Swinging strike rate was 12%, not terrible, but the swings and misses weren't really there, or the strikeouts weren't necessarily there at 21%. The walks, believe it or not, actually were fine, 9% for him. 9%, that's fine. It was the hits and the homers. 410 BABIP was allowing 14 hits per nine for Snell and a 1.5 homer nine. So he was a nightmare in these 3 starts. Now he's on the IL. Are you holding through this in non-IL leagues with Snell?
In 10s and 12s, I'm not.
You're not? Even with a
No, I
top
don't.
100 pick?
Yeah, I mean, I
I know
would.
there's some costs and everything. I'm not
I'm
trying to say
sure
that
for
that's the
me,
only reason.
like one, you just don't know how long he's going to be out for, and like he's like this may not be his only injury. Like the missing
True.
spring training, not being able to kind of warm up with the team and stuff like that. I think that has real consequences here. And this wasn't a guy like this is a guy who's lived on the edge to begin with. It wasn't like he was. If he had been pitching well, like I'd be like, oh yeah, go ahead. But like he was not pitching well at all.
You know who else lives on the edge?
Char.
Charlotte does.
Yeah,
If
she
you're watching
does.
on YouTube, you can see Char right now. She lives on the edge. She says that she would keep Blake for a little while because she paid a lot and she doesn't want to hear about sunk cost bullshit. That's what her words, not mine.
Yeah.
If you got a problem
Yeah.
with the swearing, talk to Char.
I mean, I wasn't paying for him, and so like I guess I'm a little bit biased in a way that like I had a lower opinion on Snell than the rest of the market, anyways. So, but I just obviously if you have open IL spots, though I doubt anybody has open IL spots at this time.
True.
Like even I don't
Good
have
luck
open
having
IL
that.
spots. Like, and I drafted really, really risk averse. Yeah, I mean, I guess you would keep him with IL spots, but without IL spots, like I'm not burning a bench spot on Blake Snell right now. Like we'll let someone else kind of carry the water on that.
I probably still am. I am I'm going to like prioritize, right? I'm going to look at my guys that are on that bench and then I'm going to run through the prioritizations. Let me just say this. I'm not as strident as Justin on cutting Blake Snell, but I am going through the work of saying, okay, I've got these 5 guys on my bench. What is their purpose here? What can I expect from them? When are they due back? If they're hurt, etc. And so right now, the outlook, we didn't really get an outlook. They just think it's going to be a multi-week absence, which is guaranteed to be because it's 15 days. It could be a little bit after that. We'll see.
He sounded like
it.
he didn't feel like this was a serious issue, and that he didn't even know if he really needed to go on the IL. The team is being much more cautious, which I understand. Like you've got a lot of money invested in this
of course.
guy, and you're hoping to.
He probably just wants to pitch through it and like get it figured out and get back on track. I can understand that desire from him, but the team has to slow him down and say, "Hey, Blake, take a breather, come back, and hopefully get good." Yeah, listen, I do get it. If you are cutting, I'm really trying not to, just because even in a 10 or 12, there's still some major upside there. And don't forget what his season trajectory was like last year. Yeah. People were cutting him. And I will say, with some understandable reason, because he was
Yeah.
toting a 5.40 ERA and walking the yard 9 starts into the campaign.
And then he
And you were just
continued to
like,
walk the yard. He just
but
got
stopped
better.
allowing them to
Yeah.
run. Yeah, or
Mhm.
stopped allowing them. You got me back?
Yep, I got you back. There you go. Sorry, I don't know what happened there.
Uh-oh. It says recording error, though. So let me make sure that...
It's okay. I can pull it from YouTube if I
Okay,
need
you
to.
can still get it? Okay.
Mhm.
Next up, Jesus Luzardo. Another guy on the IL, so changes the outlook of things a bit. If you've got IL spots, of course, try to hold Jesus Luzardo as long as you can. But this is an elbow injury. This isn't a butt injury the way it is with Snell.
Literally, there was just news on him that it's a mild flexor strain that he's going to play catch later this week. Oh, there you are again. Can you hear me?
Sorry, I don't know what's going on over here. Yeah, I got you now.
Yeah.
But I
Okay.
don't know what's going on here. We just got news on what with Luzardo?
With Luzardo, it's a mild flexor strain, and that he's going to play catch later this week.
Okay.
So,
What does that do to your outlook with him? Does that make you feel any better?
I mean, I think I'm holding for right now, but it doesn't. Flexor strains never make me feel good.
No,
Especially when a guy that throws as violently as Luzardo. I literally just traded for him in a dynasty
I
league.
know. We were talking about it last week.
Which, yeah, is some karma, like instant karma for trying to buy low on a guy. But is what it is. Yeah, I think I would try to hold for right now, especially with the news that like, hey, he's going to try to start throwing like right away and kind of see what happens. But if there's any sort of setback, I think he's an instant cut.
Yeah, again, you're trying to hold through this with Luzardo. Totally vibe with that because the upside is still there. And this is similar to where you're at with Snell, where I was with Luzardo, where I wasn't buying in. So I'm trying to put myself in the frame of reference of being in. I'm not just trying to be like, oh, I was never buying in, so you guys deal with it. No, I understand the talent upside. I want to try to hold here. IL him for sure. Hold him for another week in your 10s and 12s, unless you're up against it holding Darvish and Snell and guys like, or not Snell. Snell and Luzardo are close for me, but I meant to say Bobby Miller. I meant to say a
Yeah.
higher caliber guy that I'm
Yeah,
definitely
absolutely.
rocking with. Okay, so that's Jesus Luzardo. We've gone Bassett, Snell, Luzardo. Joe Musgrove, man. Every time it looks like it's getting better, he punches you in the gut again. I don't know what to do. A couple good starts in a row, back-to-back quality starts, gets you feeling pretty decent. Bang, 7 in the gut for 3 2/3. What's going on with Musgrove? Is he? Do you dare cut him in a 10, 12?
I mean, I have a really hard time cutting Joe Musgrove because I've always
I do
really loved
too.
him. But I mean, I talked about this quite a bit at, prior to draft season. Like, I was not touching Joe Musgrove in any league this year. He ended the year with elbow issues. He never came back, even though he was supposed to. And I just don't, I just don't take a flyer on those guys, even if I've loved them in the past, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
one of the reasons I didn't stash Kyle Bradish really anywhere. Like, I'm just not
Yeah.
risking any sort of issue because you just don't know what a guy's going to be like if he even does come back. I don't have a problem in 10s and 12s moving on. I know most people won't cut, but this just feels like the writing's on the wall that something is clearly not right. And I wouldn't be surprised if he hits the IL here pretty quick.
Yeah, that all makes sense to me with Musgrove, and it might, if there's another bad start here soon, it might be the classic, hey, you need a rest IL. Like there'll be
Yeah.
something they can point to, but it might not be the biggest issue, but it gets him the 15 days, even to just clear his head, throw a couple bullpens and reset. Because he has good starts mixed in. I think if you're looking for things to be encouraged by with Musgrove, you can understand and go look here, even if you use quick and dirty game scores, which I like to use just as an overview thing. He's got 2 really great starts. His April 3rd one against St. Louis and April 21st against Toronto. Another decent start at Milwaukee, the 6-3 baseline quality start. did have 4 walks in that one, but okay. The other 4 suck. So 2 up, 1 medium, 4 down. At least there's some positivity with Musgrove, and he does have 3 wins, which is more than anybody on any of my damn teams. So yeah, I'm trying to hold through this. Let me see who he's got this week. Let me pull that back up real quick. For San Diego, Musgrove's going to be looking at. Let's see here. Pardon me on this. He's going to have Cincinnati at home. What are you doing with that?
I'm not. No way am I starting an or well,
No. Home to Cincinnati. Home
Still,
to Cincinnati.
I'm not signing for Cincinnati.
Yeah, I think you bench this week and then assess from there. It's a visit to the Cubs the following week, though. That's not exactly awesome. So Musgrove's dicey right now. I don't envy people that have to kind of navigate what's going on with him. A guy that kind of snuck up on me as all of a sudden his numbers look like crap again. And I say again because after Aaron Savali got traded last year to the Rays, he put up that excellent strikeout rate. But it was pretty clouded by the fact that his results were garbage. He had a 5.36 ERA and a 1.37 WHIP because the home runs and the hits were way too high. And you're wondering, well, are those things related, Justin? Because here we are again with the K's looking good at 25%, higher than anything he's ever had in a single season, but 1.7 homers and 9.3 hits, neither of which is particularly good. And thus, Aaron Savali has a 5.06 ERA and a 1.31 WHIP. Is he in the zone too much, or is he pitching differently to get these Ks? What's up with Savali now? Good core skills as a Ray, but not good results at all.
Yes, I mean, he's filling up the zone the same amount as he did last year, which is still not like it's not a massive amount. It's right around league average. So the only real difference is teams are hitting it more. He's giving up like 92% zone contact right now. You know, I think sometimes we see a change, especially kind of a late change like we did with Savali last year, and we go, oh, look at this change, and it's working. And we sometimes don't put enough like credence in the fact like, hey, maybe hitters just haven't caught up yet, and they will.
True.
And point. So like they didn't realize what he was doing last year, and so they weren't able to catch up. But it's not like Savali's got overpowering stuff that filling up the zone can work with
to just like
all the time.
Overpower with your stuff.
Yeah, like he's not throwing 99 in the zone, and you're like, oh, I can't hit that. Like part of what makes Savali good is his ability to go outside the zone and fool hitters. So while it's great that the strikeouts are still there, everything else does not feel very great right now. Like that, there are very few pitchers that can survive, and almost none that can survive like this amount of contact in the zone.
Can Savali survive on your roster? He gets the Mets this week, which has now become a bit more of a neutral, right? Early on, we were picking on them because they couldn't hit their way out of a wet paper bag. Or do you bench and hold for the White Sox next week? So I will say this, with the White Sox on tap next week, I'm not cutting Savali anywhere yet. But I might bench for the Mets this week. What say you in 10s and 12s? You would?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, especially in 10s and 12s, like really, this was a really good week for like lower roster 2 starts. Like I picked up a lot of Bailey Falter. I picked up,
Trevor Rogers is going to be available in 10s and 12s.
Yeah. Joe Boyle is going to be available. And, I mean, like I picked him up in 15s. I picked Ryan Feltner up in 15s. Like
Steven Matz has Tigers, White Sox, which I know it's scary because it's Steven Matz, but the matchups are hot.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think I would bench and then try to like backfill with one of these kind of 2 steps in a shallower format.
Should I be stroking my wiener on the podcast? Is that?
You absolutely should not.
I'm petting my wiener aggressively.
Yeah. People who are just going to be listening to this are going to be like, what is he doing?
People that zoned out when I said that Char was here on my lap are going to just be like, what the fuck is wrong?
I know that we're one of the more risque podcasts in
even
that sphere, but even that just feels he's very hairy too.
Perhaps a bridge too far. Char's like, don't woo me into this quap. I'm not into your perversions. All right, let's go back to San Diego. I guess I could have paired the 2 Padres together, but I threw Savali in the middle of them. A guy I loved, and now this one's kind of snuck up on me after a dud this week, Michael King. I say I loved as if I'm out. That is not me giving away my hand. I'm actually still pretty conflicted. I really do like him. But what we're looking at here with Michael King is a 5 flat ERA with a 147 whip, 25% K rate. We like that. But a 13% walk rate is 2x what he was doing last year. And a 2.5 homer. I mean, that's just Tyler Wells looks at that and says, hey, you allow too many homers, my guy. And if Tyler Wells is telling you that, then you know you're doing something wrong. Like his teammate Musgrove, there's been great starts from King, but he's washed them away with absolute duds, including his last time out against Philly. And we can give him a break for at Colorado. I was open to starting
Or
King there
versus the
because,
Dodgers.
yeah, so that we can give him a couple breaks there.
Mm-hmm.
But is it enough to keep him right now? Where were you on King coming in, and where do you stand now? Seven appearances in. It's not 7 starts. It's because he came into the first or second Korea game, if you'll recall. So it's 7 appearances, 6 starts. But either way, where are you at on King at this point?
I'm not super worried on King. I mean, this is 3 bad outings, 2 of which you should have avoided at Colorado, and then home versus the Dodgers. Yeah. So, like, hopefully
you could have avoided this Philly one. Sorry to interrupt you, but like, if you were really playing it tight in the shallower leagues, which is what we're talking about with Michael King anyway, because we're not cutting him in 15s. He's way too talented for that, in my opinion. But in the 10s, you could have missed the Philly start. Yeah. You can be afraid of them.
But I also think like this like really brings up an interesting point that even I didn't necessarily like completely compute, but I'm just kind of putting it together as we're talking, is like there was a lot of talk about like, oh, I don't know what Michael King's innings are going to look like, but he's going to be really, really good. And nobody throws a lot of innings anymore.
Yeah, per inning stud is what he was supposed to be.
Yeah, I don't agree that nobody throws a lot of innings. There just aren't as many people that throw.
Well, it's all relative, right? If you throw $180 now, that is a lot relative to the field. It's not a lot compared to when we were kids. I grant that, but
if you can only project 140 innings, getting a few blow-up starts hurts a lot more.
Really stings you.
Because like you just don't have the volume to make up for it in the way. And so I'm going to factor, I think, this into kind of like how I think about some of these guys. And I think one of the reasons why I didn't end up with King in a lot of places was because my projections that I've come up with really value volume. And so I just, while I wasn't out on King, he wasn't near the value that other guys were because of the volume that they could potentially provide.
When he was a Green Arrow guy throughout the spring, constantly kind of trickling up. I don't think he ever had a zoom up where King jumped like 4 or 5 rounds, but he was just constantly kind of up.
He had actually a weird trajectory where like I think he started out really, really high, and then all of a sudden like he kind of dropped down to where I think he probably should have been, and
maybe should have been.
And then he kind of had that climb. Like I said, I don't think anything in the underlying numbers tells me like the zone contact is even better than last year. I think the one thing, he's just not getting a lot of swings outside of the zone. And he is like living in the zone a little bit too much. So maybe he needs to be okay with walking a couple more guys and kind of following last year's Blake Snell blueprint and being like, hey, I'm just not going to let you beat me.
Anecdotally, Michael King might have to make some of his out of the zone pitches a bit more competitive. Because again, anecdotally, what I remember of him from the starts I've watched is for major leaguers, not for some dolt like me. So when I say something's easy against him, I'm not saying I could achieve it, but it looks like when you're up there batting, you can lay off the stuff that's out of the zone because it's out of the zone instantly, right? He's yanking it, spiking it. And so it's a lot easier to get into a favorable count against Michael King. And that's when the home runs and the hits start coming through. 13% walk rate right now. It's not a thoughtful 13% like what you're saying with Blake Snell when he walks guys with intent.
Yeah, I will say the one alarming thing that I just noticed, the velocity is down from last year.
It is down about a tick and a half for King, and that's when you start to care. 1.5 is right around that point where you start to notice and say, hey, there's a little something there.
It was up a little bit more in the last outing, comparatively speaking to the previous one. His lowest velocity outing was in Colorado, so maybe you kind of give him a little bit of a wash for that, and that kind of pulls down the average a little bit.
Sure.
So maybe it's not as bad, and guys do build up as the season goes on, but I think it's something to just kind of monitor. I'm not dropping him yet, but I definitely he's kind of walking a wire, and I think he was drafted like 10-team leagues. He was drafted kind of at a really a cut point where like you don't need to keep a guy like Michael King on your roster, but I would hold on to him for just a minute.
I agree. He gets at Arizona this week, which is like one of those,
Not
you can avoid
starting him
that if you
there.
want, but you don't have to. The problem is it's Dodgers the following week. So it might just be
Ooh,
a bench right now. Maybe keep Michael King as some bench depth.
you know,
I don't want to cut him yet either. I want to
you
see.
might just cut him, kind of like Bassett, because no one's going to pick him up for the Dodgers.
And if they do, they're putting a bomb on their team anyway,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay,
So
that's
like
fair. If you've got
in a
someone you want
in a
now,
10-teamer, yeah, I'm actually might cut him and then pick him back up after the Dodgers.
okay, this one's crying. I don't know what she wants. She wants to say that she would not cut Michael
Podcast is
King.
over, Dad.
And she would start him against the Dodgers and end this podcast. Stop talking to Uncle Justin. I need to go outside and go pee. And the podcast is indeed over. Those are some cutter hold, shallow league pitchers. You don't got to run out and cut. If you got easier cuts, do that. I will say with all of these guys, try to keep them. I think you should because you made an investment in them. You liked them to a particular degree. But if you're up against it, and you've got a few other, you got Royce Lewis and Bobby Miller, right? So they're your two stashes, they're your two IL guys or whatever. And then you got to cut a Jesus Luzardo or Chris Bassett. We get it, but don't just run out to do it because it is still just 6 starts. We've seen this type of talent turn around before. These guys could absolutely do it. So there you go, Justin. Some interesting pitchers to talk about there. Keep tabs on Joey Loperfido if you're in a main event or if you're in the NFBC universe because we'll be bidding on him next week.
Yep.
And you and I'll be back on Thursday talking more ball. Justin, get some sleep, okay? You had the little spurt there where you were going to bed before midnight, then you fell off of it. Get some sleep tonight. I command you since you were under the weather.
I should be able to. My wife's going to be going to a concert with my older kid. And so no one's going to be around. I put the baby down and maybe I'll probably go down. We'll see if I skip my chat today. I may skip the road to write up tonight just to
there you go.
Just to get some rest.
Throw some ball on and just sink into that bed. All right, we will talk Thursday. Good. Peace.
Take it easy.